Joining me live from the United States of America, Congressman McCormick, thank you very much for speaking with us. We're all trying to figure out what the Indo-US trade deal is all about. We're being told that the joint statement will come out sometime next week, but the debate in India is, who does this benefit, America or India?
Well, wouldn't it be nice if it benefits both? If you look into the future, and the reason I'm the co-chair of the India Caucus, I believe that the largest democracy, when combined with the oldest democracy, the largest economy, combined with the economy that's going to be the third largest economy in the next 5 years, two nations that see the world very similarly, that can defeat communism, that can defeat evil when they combine their forces. Why wouldn't it be a good thing when we become closer and we rely on each other rather than on bad actors in the world? When you buy oil from Russia, maybe it's a little cheaper, but quite frankly, when you can replace it with Venezuelan oil, which is equally cheap, and American oil, you can actually support friends rather than people who are invading other countries and doing nefarious things throughout the world. Russia has a $2.1 trillion economy. Texas has a $2.7 trillion economy. Collectively, the United States has a $30 trillion economy. Choose your friends wisely, and we could rule the day together. We can usher in a new era of peace for the next 100 years that would benefit our children and our grandchildren. This benefits everybody, not just the United States, not just India, but everybody with the stability it could bring.
So let me ask you, Congressman McCormick, there is a reduction in tariffs from 50 to 18%, but President Trump has claimed that India will reduce their tariff and non-tariff barriers to zero, and that we will stop buying Russian oil, we will buy Venezuelan oil. But these details have so far not been confirmed, at least from India. Has, the detailed deal been signed? Are there any specifics that you could share with us?
No, I mean, traditionally, we've basically had tariffs about 2 to 3% on India. And India's had traditionally about 13 to 15% on ours, plus barriers. And that's what President Trump was trying to equalize, especially with access to that large of a market. We are the largest consumers in the world. But I think the details are not set at all. I think we're still negotiating. I'd be very surprised if there was a zero tariffs. I'd be very surprised if there's zero barriers. I know that India is food independent, but there are some real barriers, even to our pecans here in Georgia and other places. But I would love to see, once again, the barriers break down, that we have free trade. I'm actually a very big free trade guy. You know that President Trump, anything that he institutes is going to be around for another 2-3 years. But he also showed great flexibility. He uses it as leverage to other nations to get things that he wants. And if we can end the war in Ukraine, that'd be phenomenal. I think he would even negotiate more based on what India can do in collaboration with us to help our interests. When I say our, both of our nations' interests around the world.
So, Congressman McCormick, the reason I'm asking you this question is, has Trump jumped the gun? Because in India, the opposition already believing that all tariffs from American imports would be zero and Indian exports would suffer. And, politics, the way it pans out in any country, that's the way it's going. I once again ask you, the details still to be worked out, the negotiations still on? Nothing is written in stone?
That's correct. There's nothing written down right now that I know of that's written in stone. There's ongoing negotiations. That's why they have not signed the official done product. Now, I'll say this too. A lot of people in America get worried too, because with the tariffs also come an increase in prices in America that can cause inflation. So take a step back and realize that it's probably not going to be, when you talk about real tariffs, even when you talk about an 8% tariff that's on an original product, the actual price is much higher than that. So you're not taxed. The tariff is not on the finished product, it's on the original product, which is much, much lower as a price. For example, when you sell something to a vendor overseas, they're going to have an automatic at least 10% markup. That's not including the tariff. any of the processing or any of the handoffs in between and the middleman that's not processed in between. So the tariffs are much lower than it actually seems on paper. It has much less of an impact than most people realize, and it will have an equilibrium point in the market. So I ask people to be patient, to watch out. If it has a negative impact, if Prime Minister Modi says, this is not working for my country, he and the president will renegotiate. He showed lots of flexibility. When I say he, President Trump has showed lots of flexibility as he goes forward. You notice nothing stays the same. Even in our own economy, the way he tweets and controls the market so it doesn't overheat. He's very savvy on making sure the economy is humming. It's in our best interest that India has a strong economy. We want you guys to rival China. We want you guys to be a great friend and ally. I want to make sure that you guys in your future are linked inextricably to ours, because I think that is best for everybody.
Well, absolutely. Every country has a concern about their own domestic inflation, and that's the reason probably why India has banked on Russian oil, because it has stabilized world oil markets as well as helped India contain inflation here. Do you think the oil from Venezuela or the United States will give us that competitive edge to control our domestic inflation?
Well, first of all, realize that when you're funding a war that's killing hundreds of thousands of people, there's no way to justify it, even if it's good for your economy. I just don't believe it. When you're advancing troops into Europe, invading a country you signed a treaty with, and we did too, that's not justifiable. Funding wars, and that is funding the war, is not justifiable. I'm a huge fan of India. I love Prime Minister Modi. I'm an India Caucus chair, but when it comes down to doing the right thing, we do the right thing. And by the way, I'm critical of us too. We also have some hypocrisy involved. Europe has hypocrisy. They buy things from Russia too. You cut Russia off from their funding, this war is over very, very quickly, and then we can move on. Once the war is over, we can go back to business as usual with free markets around the world. But until that's addressed, and that may take about a year, it needs to happen. And it's not about just what's good for you in the short term. This is about long-term stability. If you have Russia successful, what do you think China's going to do in the Aruna-Paresh region? What do you think they're going to do when it comes to their advancements, because the world won't stand up for them? What do you think is going to happen when they have the leverage? We want to be consistent in our application of law, and I understand any may have to suffer a little bit. And you know what? Germany suffered a lot. Europe suffered a lot. But that's how you fix things before it becomes even a bigger problem. Because if Russia is successful, they'll continue. And they're encouraged. And then China says, well, I'm going to do the same thing as Russia. Then you guys have a bigger problem. This is about a long-term strategic plan. It's not about one time in 1 month or 1 year of oil buying, when you can offset it a little. Maybe you have a little bit of inflationary cost from slightly more expensive oil, or maybe not, because Venezuela is right now making deals. But let's do the right thing.
Absolutely. Everybody needs to do the right thing. And as far as wars are concerned, India knows its wars. We fight one virtually every other day because we have a neighbor in Pakistan. And we know what bleeding through 1,000 cuts really means. But then, like you said, every country has to look at their interests. And, sometimes the perception in India is that America a lot friendlier with Pakistan, despite India's reservations on that relationship, especially because we have an agreement on fighting terror anywhere in the world, and Pakistan, we all will have to agree, is the exporter of terror. Do you think somewhere there's a little bit of a disconnect?
I think when you look at the geopolitical scheme and how it's shifting, obviously in the past, India has bought all their arms from Russia. Now you have actually parts of the C-130J program being produced in India. So we have collaboration in military hardware. I think as we become closer and become more trusting in ourselves, and you look at the alignment of India and the United States, much more closely aligned geopolitically, the way we view things, the way we go after terrorism, the way we view even humanity, I think will draw us closer and closer together. Like I said, you have the first and the third largest economies in the world combining with similar political outlooks. I think you could usher in a whole new era of peace. That's not going to happen with Pakistan, especially the current government. When you have 270 million in Pakistan with a lot of instability, a lot of tribalism, a lot of control problems, and not rooting out those people, that doesn't play well to our relationship with them. However, we can't totally withdraw because guess who will supplant us? Russia and China. Then we'll lose all influence in that country and actually be much worse for not only us, but for you too. So it's important that we maintain our influence there. We're trying to be very strategic and even tactical in the way we approach that, be very methodical, evaluate it. But if you think 200, I think they have around 270 million people versus India's 1.47 billion people. And the economies and the way they're expanding, I think it's clear what the future holds for us, especially in our world view. I don't think we have much to worry about that as that goes. I think we'll prove to be more and more friendly towards each other. Prime Minister Modi and President Trump have great relationships. And I think we have a ton of India diaspora here that do very well to lobby for that relationship as well. My district has 14% India diaspora. And by the way, that's probably the reason that we're the wealthiest Republican district in America by median income, because they're the most successful.
Well, yes, India is going places in more ways than one. But Congressman, America's Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins said a new U.S.-India deal will export more American farm products to India's massive market, lifting prices and pumping cash into rural America. And that's sent a few shivers down the spines of experts in India, because our farm sector, our dairy sector, extremely sensitive, and India's farmers not the richest in the world, and that could have an impact on livelihood of a large population. Do you think this would be a bone of contention, and can this be worked out sensitively?
Yeah, I think people get pretty worked up about things that usually don't come to fruition. I think the fear of what it could do is more driving than the actuality. If you look at being able to buy more nuts from America, I don't think it's going to put anybody out of business in India. India has a much cheaper labor market, much faster, much more contained market to access. In other words, we'd have to ship our product, which costs more to produce anyways, across the ocean, which costs more additionally. The price point's not going to be the same. It may be more of a luxury item for people in India rather than a everyday basis of consumption. So I think it's a bit overblown. I think the market reacts the wrong way, and it does disrupt the Indian farming market. I think Prime Minister Modi is smart enough, has proven over time that he has India's interest first. He would adapt. President Trump doesn't want to ruin India's economy. He doesn't want to ruin the farming industry. He just wants access. Just like you want access to our markets, we want access to your markets. I think that's what fair trade is all about. It will find its point of equilibrium, but I don't think it's going to have as large an impact as most people think. I think it's going to be more luxury items, especially when it comes to food.
Congressman McCormick, I also want to ask you the question that India signed about 9 trade deals over the last 6 years, the most recent ones being with the European Union, which was dubbed as the mother of all trade deals. Do you think some of these deals have had an impact? Because we've been waiting for the India-America trade deal forever. Do you think this hastened the process of the announcement?
I think President Trump's been dealing with countries all around the world. I just got back from Cambodia, Thailand, Korea, Japan. They're all making deals too, and some of them are very happy with their deals with the president. I think this was just a natural process. It wasn't because of that. Realize that Europe collectively has about a $20 trillion economy. Once again, we're at $30 trillion just by ourselves. Europe's also very fractured, and you cannot compare Greece to Germany, to the United Kingdom, to France. They're all so outrageously different, and not in a bad way, just they're different. That's the way it is. Where we have a more homogenous market, even though we're regionally different, we as a consumer are much more consistent in our application of the trade deals. So I think you'll find we're good partners. We've been good partners with the world for most of the history of the United States. Matter of fact, I would make the case that we are far out-tariffed historically, more than any other nation in the entire world, collectively. If you look at the tariffs placed on the United States products. That's what President Trump is like. We've known this forever. We knew there were barriers to China and India and Europe because never do we get treated fairly. I think this is to give us more equilibrium because we're struggling with a massive amount of debt, which nobody can compare to in sheer volume. And if we don't address that, it's going to affect our economy, which in turn affects the rest of the world's economy.
So let me ask you, over the last 6 months, the perception was that there was a little bit of unease in the relationship somewhere, despite the very great personal chemistry between the heads of states of both countries, India and America. There was still a little bit of unease there. Do you think with this announcement, the chemistry improves, moves forward? How do you see it from your perspective as the co-chair of the India Caucus?
I think people will hold their breath at first, make sure that it doesn't have an impact that they're going to see as negative. Some people will maybe feel a little bit, some people not at all, and they'll be like, okay, no big deal. Let's get on with it. Let's be friends. Let's thrive together. I think as the relationship also with the H-1B visa process, we still need not as many IT people because AI is now replacing those entry-level jobs. But healthcare is still a robust need here in America. We are severely lacking healthcare industry people, doctors, nurses, mid-levels. That's going to continue to be a pipeline we need, and I think we have to have good relationships. What I'm worried about is certain people, certain segments, and I know you see this everywhere in the world, but come across as, in my opinion, as racist. In other words, and not just towards Indians, but towards anybody outside the United States. I'm trying to crush that. I don't like it. I think it's a very unhealthy movement. You're seeing it around Europe, too, by the way. And some of that's because of bad immigration policies that's really create some unsettling times, both here and abroad. You've seen the massive protests against Israel from Palestinians and Palestinian sympathizers and Muslims who've moved here. India's had unrest, too, because of some immigration and also because of the Muslim population. So we suffer from similar problems. But I think overall, I think you're going to see that trend where, once again, that mutual beneficial relationship is going to overall continue to build, especially since we have such a large, influential Indian diaspora here. If you think about it, in the last presidential race, think about it, you had both Democrats and Republicans who were Indian diaspora. My oldest son is engaged to a woman who's of Indian diaspora. It's everywhere. It's in our culture. It's in our movies and our sitcoms. It is here to stay, and I think Bollywood is just as much a part here as Hollywood is over there, and I think that's a good thing.
Absolutely, a lot of common ground between the two nations. But let me ask you the one contentious question that always comes up. You said earlier that United States would definitely want a stronger India because there is a China somewhere around. President Trump has had a long conversation with President Xi Jinping of China. They talk trade, among other things. Where does China figure in the larger Indo-American partnership? How do we look at this?
I think they're a secondary friend compared to India, and I say that openly. I say it on public broadcasting because they've shown a much more aggressive posture, a much more, how should I say, since the Made in China initiative in 2015, the things they've done to the rest of the world have been totally self-serving. And I think India, I would hope that India doesn't come across the same way. But if you look at the deals that they made overseas where they've produced things with their own, you basically take loans from China, then they use Chinese workers, basically slave labor from the western portions of China, to supply the labor so that the country doesn't get that benefit. And then they produce shoddy products, and then you're left indebted for something that they built in your country that doesn't last. That reputation gets around very quickly. I think if you look at how fast they're building their military and how aggressive their posture is towards Taiwan and India, I don't think that bodes well for them either. The fact that they've basically been part of espionage. When I say that, I'm talking about economic espionage. The fact that they're trying to steal our products, they're spying on us, that doesn't bode well for our relationship. And I think as long as they're seen as a peer rival, especially on the military front, that's going to worry us a lot. That's why it's good to have grouping of friends, people that see the world much more similarly. And I think that's why India and the United States will remain close, knowing we have a common adversary.
Well said, Rich McCormick, U.S. Congressman. Thank you very much for joining me. And in India, we're all keeping our fingers crossed that this American deal is beneficial and a win-win for both countries. Of course, you're a $30 trillion economy. We're not so big. Therefore, the fear factor does play a role as far as the expectations go. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, and once we know the details, we'd be happy to connect with you again to look at probably the winning areas, the concern areas, and how we move forward from there. Thank you very much for joining me on this special broadcast, Rich McCormick. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, and I'll keep my fingers together also.
And congratulations for your Indian daughter-in-law to be, or Indian origin daughter-in-law to be. Well, India's the best.
They have a great relationship. I'm very excited and very blessed. Thank you.